Hiya folks, this is Jordan and Kurt from the Daring Reporter. Next on our rundown we have the competitive and technical podcasts. Kurt, what are some podcasts you could recommend if I wanted to up my Hearthstone game?
Well, Jordan, to start, I would recommend Concede. This week they discuss the current meta and tournament news. Wait, why are we spoiling it? We just have to listen as it's starting right now.
Greetings.
Hello.
Greet
My greetings.
Well met.
I greet you.
Greetings, traveler.
Greetings, friend.
The pleasure is mine.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 149 of Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. We are almost 150 episodes in, and that is blowing my mind right now. I am Appa, and I'm joining you all from the Maelstrom, Louisiana, and joining us from Gadsden, New York, it's RidiculousHat.
That's so many episodes. Like,
I know, it's crazy.
What happened? You ever think you string them end to end? That's somewhere in the neighborhood of like, we're almost at, we might be including the release episodes at 1 hour per day of the year. 150 times 2, which is like 300. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
It's a lot of
so
hours.
Much.
Yeah.
Well, let's not forget about our third co-host, Botticus from Karazhan, California. How are you doing, Bot?
Doing good. I've almost been here a year now.
Yeah,
Jeez.
I forget how long I've been here. I took like a 6-month break, but I was there before that for like a year. And I've been back for a few months, so I feel like we've all had pretty good stretches of time on the podcast so far, and to many more.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Cheers.
Yeah,
I love this every time.
Yeah, it's definitely one of hit my microphone. Definitely one of the highlights of my week every week. And speaking of the podcast and how awesome it is, Concede is supported in large part by you, the listener. If you'd like to find out how you can support us and help us keep the show running and receive rewards in return, head on over to patreon.com/Concede. So I guess we should just dive straight into how our ladder's been doing. How's ladder been for you, Botticus?
So I was struggling a lot. Well, struggling is probably not the right word because I still had a very slightly positive win rate over the course of the weekend, but I was trying a bunch of stuff. I went after last episode, well, the last actual episode. I was playing some Q block and it felt good, but I was just having trouble. I would go on streaks of winning and losing and couldn't figure it out. And then I tried some Miracle Rogue that Hat gave to me and tried keeping prep in my opener a bunch to moderate to not great results. And then Saturday I was trying a bunch of different stuff and getting kind of frustrated. So Sunday I brought up an old Malagos Druid list from last set, and I wanted to make room for Floop, and I wanted to make room for to try out Taldaram. So I cut the Ferocious Howls, and I cut the Faceless, because if you're playing Taldaram, you don't need Faceless. So and added a Thalnos, and pretty much shot straight up to Legend. I think I lost 3 times from the bottom of rank 2 to Legend, and had some awesome games. I know that a lot of people have asked or commented that I should probably have Giggling Inventor in the deck, and I don't know that that's incorrect, but I have heard that there's a ton of Blood Knights and Mossy Horrors out there, so maybe it was okay to not have it in there. I'm not sure. I feel like those are in there to help your aggressive matchup, and those were not the matches I was losing. So it could just be the small sample size I had, but my version did really well. My thought process behind, for those of you who haven't seen me comment on this, the thought process behind having Thalnos in the deck is because against the Fungalmancer decks, they have a tendency to not really care too much about your spreading plagues, and I figured that Giggling Inventor was somewhat similar, and they could, like, a lot of the heal zoos can just heal up their minions after they attack in a couple times, and it just stalls for a bit, where I really wanted to be removing their minions. So my thought process was Thalnos and Starfall, when combined together, could help remove their minions so that their Fungal Mancers weren't as good. But I still think Giggling Inventor is probably a good addition to it, but I don't know what I'd cut for it.
Yeah, I've only started playing with the deck earlier today. I played 0 games of Malagos Druid in the Witchwood meta, and I actually finally just crafted a Twig of the World tree, and
Still really good.
yeah, and the decks felt really strong. I've been playing a slightly different version. I've been playing Hunter Ace's version that he posted on Twitter like in one of the first days, and I'm sure that's outdated already. So I've been making tweaks to it, and I don't like. I've been playing with it with like Giggling Inventor in mind, and it hasn't felt like Giggling Inventor would be really impactful in many of my games where I'm either behind or need something else to win. I'm usually not lacking for defensive tools. I'm usually lacking for extra burst. As in, I'll use a Malagos and then Moonfire twice, and then they'll be fairly low, and I might not have a swipe or something like that, or the swipe won't be enough to finish them off. So having Taldaram plus Floop would actually be really, really good there, and I might actually try that out after this podcast. I might put that in a build and try that out.
I
But
will
as for
say that 80% of my games, I would say, Floop was not a Malagos. Floop was almost always a Arcane Tyrant. That was the thing it was the most. So the Giggling Inventor plus that I could see being very powerful, but Taldaram almost always copied my opponent's minions. Like I said on the bonus episode, which is going to come out tonight for all of the listeners, I copied a Carnivorous Cube that had Witchwood Grizzlies in it, and I copied Splitting Festeroot. So, yeah, you it's kind of like with Face. It's the same thing as Faceless. Faceless usually didn't end up copying my own
yeah,
stuff.
I,
It copied my
I've
opponent's stuff.
I've only played I think 3 games with it so far. So I mean, I'm no expert by any stretch. But the only games I played against were Tempo Mage, which was really easy, and I don't think any of the changes would have made a difference there because they got beaten pretty handily. And then the other 2 were against Control Warlock, actually. So that's where I found myself needing like the extra burst. I still won those, but it was a little closer than I would have liked.
That's the
So
funny thing, right? You're saying that you could have used these extra cards and it would have felt even more like you dominated them, but I still won anyway.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
I don't
and
know.
the thing about Giggle, in my experience with Mally Druid, I play that deck pretty aggressively. I play the Open Summons version before the rotation, and Giggles, if you want that extra burst, you just load that guy up with Branching Paths. You just Branching
Yeah,
Paths them and then get in for 11.
I really do like that idea, and I also play the deck very aggressively, even though I don't have as many minions as you're used to playing with. But Malagos gets +3 attack, or sorry, Malfurion gets me +3 attack a lot, and I go face for 3 a lot.
Yeah, whenever I have Malfurion out, I'm usually upgraded steady shotting my opponent every turn.
Yeah, that's definitely a Fiery War Axe or whatever you want to call it to the face, and I will confirm, Bot, the Floop was a Giggling Inventor more than it was a Malygos, though the build that I was trying out most recently was Tyler's Mallywaggle build, where sometimes Floop is an Azalina or a Togwaggle.
Do you play double Innervate in that deck?
0?
So how does can you even combo, or does it play Biology Project? I'm wondering how the Floop combos with Togwaggle Azalina, because if I remember correct, you need 11 mana on that turn. If you go Togwaggle, they switch back, and then you Togwaggle and Azalina. Or
Yep.
am I? How are you making that work?
You just
Well, it
Togwaggle
depends
them.
on-
You just Togwaggle them twice. You can just Togwaggle them and make them spend the time to switch back and then do it again.
Do you play
Okay, so
Dream
the
Petal
tempo's good
Florist on that?
I don't. I think that Florist is also in that deck. Yeah, I think Florist is in there.
Okay, so you can
yeah.
have turns where you go Togwaggle, Break Twig, and then Azalina, or you have turns where a Florist is discounted Togwaggle or Azalina, then you combo them that way, and then
Yep.
it can be an Azalina on the follow up.
Yep.
Right.
Or a Malygos, or it can be a second Giggling Inventor, or you can just Togwaggle them, make them pay the 5 mana switch back, and then Togwaggle them again. There's a lot of ways to make it work. It's flexible, and I do think that Togwaggle by itself is probably not good enough in this meta, but I do think that the combination of the Malygos and Togwaggle game plans in the same deck, it results in very little sacrifice in the deck building, and it gives you kind of another angle with which to attack the game.
You know what we're doing right here? We're diving headfirst into our explanations. So
You're right.
I'm gonna go on with how my ladder's been going. I'm at rank 4. I was talking about this on the bonus episode that we just recorded that should be going live soon, TM.
Tonight.
Yeah, that I hit the bottom of rank 5 with Radiant Elemental, OTK, APM Priest, because I had no idea how to play that deck, and I lost. I went 0-12. So I've been scraping my way back up with a shaman deck that I built that's like a 60-ish% win rate right now in like 15 games or something like that. I don't remember exactly the stats on it, but I haven't played too much in ranked because again, what we talked about on the bonus episode was kind of finding fun again in Hearthstone. And laddering for me for the past week or so has just felt really stressful. And with all the other stuff going on in my life right now, like getting ready to go back to school, work, the 2 writing gigs I have, just other stuff, I was like, okay, I guess let's just play casual and play fun decks and just not worry about the stars. So that's what I've been doing for the past couple days. So I'm still at rank 4, but I'm having fun playing different stuff. I created a fatigue Dead Man's Hand warrior where the only win conditions are Dr. Boom and Fatigue. And then it also plays like Weapons Project and Harrison Jones just for some really sweet turns. And I'm excited to play that to fall asleep later tonight. And I'm excited to try out different builds of Malygos Druid. So I'll probably be playing a little bit more on casual until I kind of get a feel for what I want to play on ladder moving forward. But for right now, I've just been kind of dirtling around, not in very low stakes matches. So how's ladder been for you this week, Hat?
So I love this meta, and when I say this meta, I mean what this meta was when we talked about it last week and what this meta is this week, and they're not even close to the same thing. And I'm looking at my stats right now. Since the set came out, I've played 162 games in ranked standard, which is pretty high for me in a 7-day period, especially considering that a new World of Warcraft expansion came out at the same time. I took a week off work, don't worry, I'm still employed. And I've played games with every single class. I have 17 Druid games, 23 Hunter games, 11 Mage games, 4 Paladin, 5 Priest, 47 Rogue, 19 Shaman, 23 Warlock, and 13 Warrior. I love that I've been able to try and just play a little bit of every class. A little bit of all of them. And there's so much going on.
Oh, well, a little bit of every class except Rogue, which is a lot of them.
Well, yeah.
It is Rogue, so.
Yeah. I mean, you play the best class the most. Anyways. So, I actually did hit Legend with the deck that you're all expecting. Odd Mech Warrior. With Azalina Soul Thief. Right? Totally normal. So...
I blame Rabobson.
It is... So, I gave him
That
the Azalina
deck
deck.
is titled Rebodson.
No.
Calls it anything different, they're wrong.
So, Rebodson was something I tried last week, and I was like, I keep losing to Mecha Cthulhu. How do you ever play this? I keep losing to Togwaggle. And so, first of all, I had to wait for Mecha Cthulhu to not be a thing anymore. It's kind of not a thing now. Second of all, Steve Wicked Good, who I guested with over on the Off Curve podcast, where we took his normal 20-minute episode and I guested, so it was a 90-minute episode, where he was playing Taunt Mech Warrior. Not odd, just every casting cost. And Dr. Boom was really good, and being kind of mid-rangey was really good, and rag shots are still really good. and it was able to put these slower combo-y decks that we were seeing about 5 days into the expansion on the back foot, because they usually have all the time in the world, and what you do is you take all the time they have and hit it for 8 every turn, and then eventually they either die or have to make inefficient plays and they lose. But the meta shifted once again, and so I saw a list from a player named Manetti, who was playing an odd mech warrior with, it didn't have Boomship, didn't have anything higher end, but it did have Baron Geddon, it did have Dr. Boom, of course, and it had Azalina Soul Thief. And so I was like, okay, I'll give this a shot. And then I played, the first game I queued up with it was against a Togwaggle Druid. And the turn after he went Dream Petal Florist with 0 cards left in the deck, I said, okay, that looks nice. Shield Slam, Azalina, Hero Power, go. And he had a 0-mana Azalina, a Togwaggle, and 2 Naturalizes. Now, I was a warrior with Tank Up. He was a Druid with not Tank Up, so his life total was lower than mine. So he thank you emoted me, switched the decks, I switch him right back and double naturalize him, and we're Azalining back and forth, so we copy each other's naturalizes, except he was dead and I wasn't. Because, he was further into fatigue, and I had a lot more armor. It was extremely enjoyable, and then I beat a couple of paladins, and then my final boss was against Miracle Rogue. I beat it despite attempting as hard as possible to punt, including turn 3, shield slam the 3/4 for 3, then tank up. Yes, I won that game. No, there was no justice in Hearthstone, but super fun.
The control warrior god right here.
Yeah, and then by the way, the next turn he played a Strider, and the turn after, the 3-1 that got shield slam for 3 when I had 7 armor at the end of that turn was still alive. He played a second Strider, still won that game. Because you know what I did to win? I Azalina'd his Shadow Stepped Leroy and his Preppy Vis and killed him for Xaxes after he Myra's Unstable Element.
You disgust me.
Totally deserved it.
You're my hero.
So we have the full range of reactions in 10 seconds here. The point is, I love this meta, and a week ago I was concerned about the volume of combo we were seeing, but the aggressive and mid-range and control tools just needed some time to catch up. Zoo is not anywhere near as threatening as it felt last week. There are way fewer biology projects. Druid feels much more beatable, and maybe it can be considered problematic that the way to beat them is just take their hand. I don't know. I still enjoy it, and I still am able to tank up people. I think the meta's in a really good place, and for this kind of diversity to exist is super fun. And yes, shout out to Mad at Arms on Twitch. Even when Hat is playing Warrior, he's playing Rogue.
Even when he's playing Warrior, he kept prep.
Until I Prepavis my opponent for Exact Lethal, who I'm fairly certain was more disgusted than either of you.
No, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of all of this.
Yeah. Speaking on the meta, it feels kind of like what we had by the end of the Witchwood, except there's less Shutterbox Shaman and there's like a little more. There's like sprinkles of other new decks, and like not every archetype is fleshed out or anything like that. So I'm sure we'll get more decks moving forward. But right now, it feels like it's in a pretty good place, and I think that'll make for a pretty good tournament environment. It may not feel great on ladder moving forward because for deck diversity, when a meta has a high diversity of decks and classes that can be played, it can kind of feel like you're playing rock paper scissors or rolling some dice in terms of your matchups. But if that's how it feels on ladder, that kind of generally means that the tournament meta is going to be great. So I'm excited to watch some tournaments moving forward.
Yeah, we can talk about all this in the explanation segment, but if we're all done with ladder, we should probably start getting into news, and then we can really dive deeper into the meta a little later.
Yes.
All right, so highlights for this week in news. Yong Woo is going to be leaving Blizzard and joining Ben Brode's, I don't know, I guess it's not his company, but either way, he's joining Second Dinner, the company that Ben Brode started. He will be joined also by Jamaro Kindred and Michael Schweitzer. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right.
Yes.
They put a little video on Twitter, and I don't even know what to make out of this. Second Dinner is just taking all the Hearthstone peeps. What do you guys take away from this? Go ahead, Appa. What do you think about Yong Woo and these two go into second dinner.
I mean, people leave companies all the time for a variety of reasons. And I mean, this happens with WoW, Diablo, League, Overwatch, like Magic, other card games. So I'm not really worried about this. I've seen some people on Twitter either memeing or being seriously concerned about these people leaving. But I mean, they've kind of given Hearthstone the base, and now they're just passing it off to other members of Team Five. So I think Hearthstone's in great hands, and I'm also excited to see what this new game company is working on.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of good hands, one of the kind of follow-ups to this, actually this happened today and this video came out a little earlier this week, called Hearthstone Behind the Scenes of the Boomsday. And this was a video that Play Hearthstone posted on their website that was kind of, it wasn't really interview style. It was Dave Kosak and Peter Whalen and some of the other members of the Hearthstone team uh, talking about kind of bringing the new sets forward and showing. They actually showed a video of live footage from one of their kind of reveal to everybody what they're going to be working on for the next year before for Boomsday. So I know Hat saw this video as well as me, and had some thoughts about both Yongwoo leaving and this video, kind of showing some of the fresh faces from the Hearthstone team. What do you think of this video, Pat?
So I want to talk about the combination of these two news items together. First of all, I'm going to attempt to do the thing where things are not terrible or amazing, where things are right in the middle. Because Woo and Broad were very, very visible. Jamara was very recently visible. Michael Schweitzer, Hamilton Chu, a little bit less public about their involvement with Hearthstone. They all helped bring us from nothing to now, the game that we love, so much that we talk about it multiple hours a week, and made an extra episode just so we could talk about it more. And that was in between taking the topics from the Discord where we're talking about the game. It's a lot of our personal identity is invested in Hearthstone, and that's pretty common with anyone that identifies with any particular game or fandom. You invest into what this game means, and it becomes more than just the action of playing the game. It becomes about the identity that's associated with the game. It would be a disservice to not recognize the value that these 5 individuals created by helping make this game in such a visible way. With that being said, Team 5 is a large team. I think when we were at BlizzCon, we asked, there were like 100 different people there. It's a very large team, and by watching the video, where you see Dave Kosak and Peter Whalen and Giovanni all be so visibly engaged as management at Hearthstone with their employees, still get the feeling that there's top-down leadership, that this game is not going anywhere, that it's still making Blizzard a bunch of money. I have faith in the direction the game is going in. I am very happy with the card designs of Witchwood and Boomsday from a design standpoint in terms of art and direction, and in terms of the depowering of the game, which I firmly believe is an active design decision. There still could be some missteps, probably will. There will probably be a point where we recognize this is a different direction than the game was going in before everybody changed and left. And we did lose something by losing these valuable people to a new company that I'm sure will be making some awesome games. But I'm not ready to say that Hearthstone is going to suffer because of it. It'll be different. I have faith in the future of the game based on the direction that it started on and the direction it is currently going in. And as for what impact these particular staff departures have, we'll just have to wait and see. But the rest of Team 5 hasn't let us down yet, and I see no reason to believe that they will.
Yeah, I will say that when you're talking about the direction of the game, I definitely feel like this set, more than any set that I've played in the past, feels so much more flavorful, I guess is the word I could use, than some of the other sets. It just feels, when I play with the Boomsday cards, I feel more like a scientist, or I feel like there's science involved, and I really get a better feeling for what this set was trying to convey to us the player, whereas a set, for instance, like Kobolds and Catacombs, I didn't feel like an adventurer going and finding treasure and hanging out with kobolds and stuff. That just felt like a bunch of powerful cards, whereas this really feels like there's crazy experiments going on and kind of all this wacky stuff. I really felt, I don't know whether that's the marketing done or a combination of the cards or what, but I really like the way that they've done this set, and really hope they can continue uh giving a lot of flavor in the cards that they create to make it feel like what they're trying to convey with the set. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I think the only sets that I would put in contention, I think League of Explorers, you can make a pretty clear comparison of how it felt to play that set, the feeling of exploration and excavation and finding new things, but it was also a much, much smaller set. It was 45 cards as opposed to 135. Journey to Ungoro, I really like the kind of wild feel, and Whispers of the Old Gods, I think, made the corruption thing work really well, but again, these are nascent parts of Hearthstone's history. Where Boomsday Project, I think we talked about it a bit last week, this is the first self-referential set where it's built on something a character Hearthstone basically made. Dr. Boom was a nameless quest mob in WoW, and ended up being this really powerful thing in Hearthstone. And so Hearthstone isn't referencing WoW, it's referencing previous Hearthstone. I think that's really cool, and I agree with you. The feeling of being involved in the motif and theme of the set is second to none, in my opinion. So I think that's really great, and I hope it continues as well.
All right. The next item we have in here is this week is actually going to be the standard Brawliseum for the Tavern Brawl. I have started my free run. I of course am doing Mali Druid, same list that I used to hit Legend with, and I'm currently 3-0. Although I will say that I queued up for my first game, and my opening hand was Wild Growth, Nourish, Twig of the World Tree, and my opponent coined out a Kidnapper. They did not win.
Is that in a new set, or
No.
like
It-
the 6 mana 5/3 combo sap?
oh yeah, they sapped. I think they might have sapped a 5/5.
That
Yeah, they
that
might
also
have said that I.
came bundled with 5 extra cards and 5 damage and 5 armor.
Yeah, something like that. It wasn't a very impactful sap. They died very quickly. Or no, actually, I didn't get to UI that game. Either way, we don't need to get into the specifics. But I've been drawing a lot of twigs on and playing them by turn 3 or 4. So I'm currently 3-0. I think the deck is very good. So I'll keep seeing if I can do better with it. Appa, I know you've started you've done a free run, right?
Yeah, I started and finished very quickly, unfortunately.
What were you playing? Because I
So-
thought your deck was interesting.
Yeah, I was playing my shaman deck that I posted in Discord. I can actually link it here after the show's over, or if one of y'all want to grab that and just put that in there now, that'd be awesome. But I put together a mid-range shaman deck, and I've been just testing various builds with Thunderhead and cards like Zap and Feral Spirit, just to kind of generate the most value out of Thunderhead possible. But it's a mid-range shaman deck with Bloodlust and Thunderhead and some other token generation cards, and it's actually been performing like reasonably well on ladder. I know I gave the list to somebody else, and they're 5-0 with it right now. And one of the games I lost in the Tavern Brawl in the Brawliseum, I absolutely should have won. I made the decision to not totem on a turn because I was trying to play around Spreading Plague, but I should have just played into it anyways because I was fine if he had it. And then they UI'd my Flame Tongue Totem, and I Electrostorm Surge and Bloodlusted, and they were at 2. So that totem would have killed them, and then the next turn they gained 26 armor. And I was like,
Ooh.
oh,
Ooh, that's a lot of
okay.
armor.
That's
So I'm just dead now. Cool. Neat. But yeah, I could have played that game differently. So I mean that would just change how the whole run plays out. But I went 2-3. made some mistakes. Still think the deck definitely has some legs and has some game, and I'm still tinkering with it. But that's how my first run went. I think my second run, I'm either gonna try Malygos Druid or get some games in with the Fatigue Warrior deck that I made and see if that's like a reasonable deck at all to play. Because it feels fine, and the theory behind it seems solid. So, yeah, that's
Yeah,
where I'm at in Brawliseum.
I know that Rebobson 12-0'd with Odd Fatigue Warrior. Well, I don't know if it's technically Fatigue Warrior, but I know he 12-0'd with a Warrior deck earlier today, so that seems like a pretty solid choice to be going for. He was seeing a lot of Odd Rogue and somewhat aggressive decks, so the Odd Warrior seems to be good. But if you're looking for a deck to play in the Brawliseum, this Dexplanations we're going to do will probably be perfect for you, and we should probably recommend a deck for people to at least use on their free run if they have the cards for it. But the last news item I have on here is Twitter has been a bit aflame as of late, talking about potential nerf of Quest Rogue again, as Hat types in news in quotation marks. Because I know he has strong feelings about Quest Rogue getting nerfed a third time, but I know Bino and I want to say it was Ray C were making tweets about Quest Rogue, and Fino has a screenshot of HS Replay saying Quest Rogue has the highest win percentage in Tier 1. But I haven't seen too much Quest Rogue on ladder. I can't imagine that it needs a nerf, but who knows? I know a lot of pros were saying when they nerfed it again, they didn't change it enough to kill it because it still kind of does the same thing. But what are your thoughts, Hat? I know you had some stuff to say about me putting this in here as quote unquote news.
So Twitter is so hot with the takes. There are so many takes. The heat is burning up. And newsflash, known Quest Rogue professional Hearthstone player thinks Quest Rogue is good. But it's a fringe tournament deck that relies on an overtuned neutral card that is in literally every deck. Is that Quest Rogue's problem? I would encourage you, if you wish, feel free to take Quest Rogue on the ladder. Giggling Inventor is a very good card in that deck. It is also a very good card in other decks, but it is very good in Quest Rogue. I encourage you to take it on the ladder, and please write into the show if you feel that it is completely overpowered. In my experience playing it, which was a few of those 47 games, it is good in the matchups where it was already good. It's not a lot better than it was before outside of the obvious buff with Giggling Inventor, which is very good against aggressive strategies. And there's a lot of ways that you get completely blown out. It also requires extremely tight technical play. And I don't know if I see the advantage of playing it over any number of other decks. Now, in tournament play, it could very well be good in LHS, or as a fringe player with the proper ban. I think it's a strategy that's going to exist for a while. Is it dominating and overwhelming? Not that we've seen at any level of the ladder. And this past week, I think is probably not a good time to call for nerfs, because we've seen the following things be broken. Biology Project, the Solarium, Kingsbane Rogue hit rank 1 legend. It's probably not broken. Quest Rogue did
hit number 1 legend.
What did?
Or stayed. Whizbang.
Whizbang.
Stayed
Yep.
at number 1
Yep.
legend.
And then when Whizbang fell out of it, he got back there with Kingsbane Rogue. Also, for those of us mere mortals, please do not attempt to play Kingsbane Rogue. It's very difficult to play. There's just so many strategies that are out there right now. It's really unclear why we're talking about a nerf so quickly, other than Fino, who made the initial tweet, was one of the best and most prominent Quest Rogue players in the world under its first iteration, and still played it. Was still very good at it, and is still very good at it, and the deck in the right hands is very powerful, as are many, many other really good combo decks in standard meta. And Hunter Ace just tweeted, Malygos feels like Raza Priest. He's probably playing a lot of Malygos, right? Tyler is playing Mallywaggle Druid, and he'll play whatever is going on. Fibonacci is having trouble figuring out Warrior, but there's good Warrior decks going around. I'd be really surprised if we were at the point where Quest Rogue is the problem. I do believe that Giggling Inventor at 5 mana is too good and will be adjusted to 6. Zach O from Vicious Syndicate said that, and I do think the card just is a little bit too much for 5 mana. I don't think it's problematic in the way that even Corridor Creeper was, or any other powerful neutral, or any of the class cards. And aggro is still good enough in this meta, but when you see double Blood Knight and Mossy Horror start being run in large numbers, there's probably some kind of problem with the power level of the card.
Mossy's just good, man.
I mean,
I told you Mossy's
So,
good.
I'm not
I
saying it's
don't-
not good.
I don't feel like Giggling Inventor does like too much of a broken thing or anything. I think it feels more akin to like a piloted shredder as opposed to a corridor creeper or a bone mare or something like that. And that it was just very ubiquitous and it's just really good for its rate. And maybe its rate is a little too pushed, but it's not doing anything like particularly gross. If that makes sense.
It's defining the format as a defensive card on turn 5, like Sludge Belcher did, and I don't know if Sludge Belcher and Shredder would have lasted as long as they did in their incarnations back then. It's doing what Blizzard said they don't want any card to do, where you go to a certain mana cost in your deck, and you put in this overpowered neutral, and you don't think about it anymore. And that's, I think, where they might have ended up with Giggling Inventor. That's a mistake, because a card that's good in Odd Rogue and Malyghost Druid at the same time probably needs some kind of adjustment. It shouldn't be that easy to just throw it in your 5 slot. So I'm not saying this game is no fun because Giggling Inventor exists and I can't believe it in Blizzard how good you. I'm saying I think it does a little bit too much for the mana cost. It makes deck building less interesting and it makes the games a little bit more predictable, and it's warping the format in terms of what answers you want to play. And that's just an indicator that because everything in this format is so hinged around this one particular card and effect, and it is a neutral, they should probably just tweak it to make deck building more interesting and gameplay a little more varied.
I feel like I'm in a similar spot to where Appa was when Spreading Plague cost 5 mana, in that I'm playing a deck that doesn't care about Giggling Inventor for the most part.
Yeah, so
And-
when Spreading Plague costs 5 mana, alright, I was playing Jade Druid Mirrors, I was playing Control Shaman with Devolves in it. So I didn't care at all about Spreading Plague.
Yeah, so I do think that it probably needs some tweaking to it, because it's probably hurting the aggro decks enough where the combo decks can just play Giggling Inventor and have a much higher win percentage against them, where the aggro deck should be beating the combo decks more consistently.
Yeah, I think it's really towing the line of fair into approaching. It's like on the line between fair and too good, to where it's just like fair enough that it doesn't feel busted, but it's like almost too good and that it's in almost every single deck in the format. So it's just occupying this really weird space. And I do think that them tweaking it would be nice for deck building and everything moving forward, but I'm sure we got like 5 or 6 weeks until anything happens like that.
Yeah,
So.
the nerf timing is typically 2 months in, and that's even if this card needs it that quickly. And
Yeah.
before anyone responds with more takes that are filled with heat, please be aware, we like the meta. We are fans of this meta. We do not believe the sky is falling or is anywhere just near making contact with the ground. It's just that the issue with the KNC or the pre-nerf Witchwood meta was that Lackey Voidlord was so strong that every deck had to run Spellbreaker, except for Paladin, which ran Call to Arms instead, and could compete fairly with an unfair mechanic of Voidlord. The other decks had to run Spellbreaker, and they got run over by Even Paladin because Even Paladin didn't have a 4/3 on turn 4. So when you look at all...
Even Paladin still ran Spellbreaker usually.
Yeah, and it ran that too, but it didn't have to compromise when every other deck did. Right. And now you look at a lot of aggressive lists, and they all have some number of Blood Knights or Mossy Horrors. And if we get to the point where those aggressive decks have to compete against controlling strategies, And by the way, they have three threes for 3 and 2 7s for 6. The aggro decks are naturally not positioned well because they have to compromise, because of this powerful neutral card that is warping the specific type of answers it deserves. We're not there yet, but the control decks don't have to compromise and the aggressive decks do, and that usually means there's some kind of trade-off being made that over a long period of time isn't necessarily super pleasant for the format. I do think the format is in a reasonable place and the aggressive tools are actually better than it seems, but a lot of the strategies are going for those sticky boards. You see some of the more powerful aggressive strategies are death rattle-based strategies with eggs. And I don't mind those kind of mid-rangey board-centric strategies, but I'd rather see the aggressive decks be able to compete without, again, playing 3-mana 3/3s and 6-mana 2/7s. It's just a little bit too far over the line of what I'd call format warping, because you have to play those cards, or Giggling Inventor just kind of counters your strategy in a really powerful way.
Yeah, all makes a lot of sense. And that's all we had for the news this week. Let's jump into tournaments.
Let's all step off our soapbox and jump into tournament results.
So it's the first week of the Boomsday, and we have 2 tournaments to discuss. Now be aware, one of these is decidedly more competitive than the other. We have the Hearthstone Invitational, which had 4 invited teams of 3 members each that were all repping 4 different parts of the world: the US, Europe, South Korea, and Taiwan. Team South Korea, which consists of, I'm going to spell his name out once and then try and pronounce it for the rest of the podcast, RHDGURWRNS. I'm going to call him Rudger Wuns. It's good enough. Didahoni and Rini Hour. They won the tournament over the European team of Dane, Jackie Chan, and Tice, which I'm sure had some spicy brews. Taiwan took 3rd place with HQ Roger, HQ Shaxi, and Tom60229, and the American team came in 4th with Ant, Ali Straza, and Trump SC. Now, this was, again, a show match, an invitational format. Each player played 1 deck. It was best of 3, no bans, no counter queuing, just whoever won best of 3 in all 3 matches got played each time. Super duper fun to watch. And we'll talk about a few games that you should really go out of your way to watch because they were really fun. HCT Germany, on the other hand, was a tour stop. The weekend the set came out. The set had been out for 5 days. The deadline for decks, I believe, was the Thursday. And the event started on that Saturday. These are some nascent decks in the format. They are very, very new, almost completely untested. And you will see in the HCT Germany results, people tended very strongly towards decks that were good in the Witchwood meta. But Trek won that over Kalax. Tice and Kolmari made top 4. Casey, Deathboost, Dizdemon, and Yogg made the top 8. Now, as far as the tournament meta, the Invitational, this is not a meta. Be aware, these are show match decks. They're fun. We've got a 1 Malygos Druid. We've got a Spell Damage Tempo Mage. We've got an odd Mech Paladin. We have a combo Mech Priest. We've got a Pogo Rogue, a Death Rattle Rogue, a Rune Spear Evolved Shaman, a Token Shaman, an Even Shaman, a Quest Warlock, yes, a Quest Warlock, and yes, we are talking about that later, don't worry, a Mechathune Warlock, 2 Zoo Warlocks, 2 Baku Mech Warriors, and a Mech Control Warrior. Shoutouts to Team South Korea, the winning tournament. They all played in the same room, even though it was midnight their time. They all got together and hung out. You could see them on camera. They were having the time of their lives, and their decks were the spiciest. Now, at HCT Germany, we're talking about decks that are much more in line with what we are used to seeing in terms of what was around in the Witchwood meta, and these are established decks with little tweaks. Druid was by far the most popular class. 12 of the 16 Druids in the top 16 had Malygos in them. There was also a Big Druid, a Spiteful Druid, a Togwaggle Druid, and a Token Druid. There were 13 Warlocks, 6 were Even, 5 were Zoo, 1 was Control, 1 was Cube. 10 Rogues, 6 Odd, 3 Miracle, 1 Quest. 8 Hunters, 4 Spell Hunters, 3 Egg Hunters, 1 Secret Hunter, 5 Shutterwalk Shaman, 4 Mages, or 3 Mages, all of which were tempo, but 2 of them had a spell damage package, including unexpected results. 3 Warriors, 2 were Mech Control, 1 was Odd, 3 Odd Paladins, and 2 Priests, 1 Topsy-Turvy, and 1 Mechathune, not the Death Rattle build, the old Gilded Gargoyle build. Again, the players had about 2 days to figure out their decks. So it's very much based on the top performance of the previous meta. The winning lineup was Token Druid, Shutterwalk, Heal Zoo, and Odd Warrior. and the runner-up was Mali Druid, Spellhunter, Tempo Mage, and Odd Rogue. Finals was all French players. There were, I think, 4 French players in the top 16, a couple of which play-tested together. Really, really good results from the French group. Now, as far as games to watch, I know it's early on in the meta, and I know it seems like what value could there be in watching games, especially at the Invitational, where players were playing a show match. Go find the USA versus South Korea match. It's 3 games. Watch the whole match. Go watch it. It is worth your time. The least interesting game is the Pogo Rogo versus Control Warrior Game 1, because Pogo Rogo is obviously very, very good against control strategies. It is the least interesting game of the whole series, but does involve 3 bunnies attacking for 58 to close out the game. And Dide Honi has a lot of fun building bunnies, shuffling them back in the deck, drawing more of them, building more bunnies, and shuffling them back in. They were very large bunnies. Game 2, Nether Portal. Appa and Botticus, you know what that card is, right? You know what Nether Portal is?
I wasn't aware until you explained it to me
So,
before the show.
remind me
Oh,
what
I
Nether
knew.
Portal.
I knew as soon as you said it.
Botticus, remind us where you get Nether Portal from.
So there's this card called Lakari Sacrifice that I have a golden copy of. It is the Warlock quest, and you need to discard 5 cards
Yes.
in order to get the quest reward, which is the Nether Portal, and it summons 2 3/2 demons on both sides of it when you play it. It's a 5 mana, essentially dormant. It's not a minion, but
It's a
the
spot on your
dormant
board.
thing.
Spot on your
Yeah.
board, and at the end of every turn, it spits out 2 3/2 imps, and it cannot be destroyed. It takes up a spot on your board, but it is not a minion. Costs 5 mana, you have to discard 5 cards. Well, you know who else has a Golden Warlock quest, Botticus, is Ridgerwons. I don't know how to pronounce his name. But I do know how to say he had that card, the reward, in his hand on turn 6, and played it on turn 7 against a Control Warrior. Now, the imps go forever. It wasn't actually that great. They were actually neck and neck for life total for a while because one of them was playing Discard Warlock and the other one was playing a real deck. But Ridgerwins falls far enough behind. It's like, oh, okay. Well, my board state is actually not that great, so I'll just play this Omega Agent on 10 and get 3, 4, 5s. The turn after, I think I'll just Azalina and take your hand because you're a Control Warrior and I want those cards. So go get the Lich King, get a Frostmourne, cast Omega Assembly, Dead Man's Hand, these Shield Slams back into my Warlock deck. Eventually, after a clutch Frostmourne, the Warlock gets to win. An unbelievable game to watch. And game 3, the Runespear Evolve Shaman deck, on turn 3, evolves into a Radiant Elemental with Unstable Evolution. Now, their first evolve and their other minion, a Voltaic Spark, hit Fairy Dragon, which you cannot evolve anymore. The other one goes all the way up to Mechathune, and then that Radiant Elemental turns into a Bear Shark. By the way, the Shaman deck lost that game. Did not win. They were against Ant with Control Warrior again. Stormbringer even gave them a Dr. Morrigan, and the casters were rooting, can I get this Dr. Morrigan and just shuffle back into the deck? I want the Fatigue Evolve token Shaman. But it didn't happen. Ant gets well above 40 health with Dr. Boom's health, and the game ends with fatigue damage. Truly incredible to watch. So much fun. You should go watch that. Now, for the serious game, which you should also go watch, the last 2 games of Casey versus Seiko in Group A. Now, Casey and Seiko are 2 of the best players in the world at the moment. And Casey, if you don't know him, just look up Miracle Rogue. He is probably the most practiced Miracle Rogue player in history. Seiko won a tournament earlier this year. They both have a lot of top 4s, top 8s, top 16s this year. 2 of the
Cassie
highest.
has the most. Cassie has the most top 16s out of any player this year.
Yep. They're both pretty high up in the point totals. I believe both top 10, if not higher. I know Hunter Ace is number 1, but I think these guys are also right behind him. And Botticus is going to keep me honest by looking that up. Thank you, Botticus. So Casey starts off quickly, up 2-0. His Even Warlock beats Spellhunter. His Egg Hunter beats Odd Rogue. That's not a good matchup for him, but he's able to take it down. All he has to do is win with Miracle Rogue. Surprise. He can't beat Odd Rogue with it. That's not a good matchup. He's against Mali Druid. It's a close matchup, but a player of a skill may be able to navigate his way through, and he has a really strong hand. Hench, which gets naturalized into Strider on 4, and Seiko has a good hand too. Twig double nourish with the Tyrant, but Casey has the second Strider, preps a fan to clear off the Tyrant, gets another 4/4, develops another Elec, the 3/4, the new card, augmented Elec 3-mana 3/4, that when you shuffle a card in, you shuffle a second copy, and a second Spider. He's got a very wide board, 6 minions. Seiko ramps to 10 mana on turn 6. His hand is UI, Branching Paths, and Spreading Plague. And he makes the call, I'm not going to UI, because you've got 6 minions, killing one of them won't help me. I'm going to play Spreading Plague, Branching Paths for +2 attacking, and have 6/3/5 spiders. And Casey had a 3/3 hench, a 3/4 Elec, and 4 4/4 spiders. Casey attacks in, has a 4/4, 3 X1 minions, swipe off the top. Clears Casey's board. Leaves Seiko with 2 UIs in hand, a Twig on 1 mana, and pressure, keeping his opponent, Casey, down to a low life total, and Casey claps, puts his head in his hand, and then concedes the next turn. And we're down to 2-2. In the last matchup, Casey is on Miracle Rogue, and Seiko is on Spell Hunter, which I don't know if you remember me talking about, is the actual worst possible matchup for Miracle Rogue. Because you lose to their pressure, you lose to their secrets, you lose to everything. Giggling Inventor might help, but Casey is visibly shaken, conceded on 6 life on the previous game, just wanted to be over. And this matchup's really, really bad. And Seiko starts with turn 1 Secret Plans, turn 2 Secret, turn 3 Huffer. About as bad as the start gets. But Casey top decks backstab into Augmented Elec. Next turn, plays the Strider. There's now 3 secrets on Seiko's board. Into pop both secrets, the Explosive and the Wandering Monster. Trades cleanly, and then plays Giggling Inventor. Rexar reduces the board to a single Annoyatron, but then Gadgetzan, Coin, Cold Blood, Prep, Sap Your Rat Trap, Prep, Evis Your Face. There's another Spider that comes down. And the next turn, the Auctioneer lives. Casey just pushes 15 damage, gets another Spider off the top, puts his opponent dead to rights with Leroy Evis in hand, does not extend to Unleash the Hounds. Seiko destroys 3 minions, cannot kill the last Spider, and dies to Leroy Evis in a matchup that was so unfavored for Casey, and Casey ends up moving on. It was really incredible to watch, and the cries from the crowd, the shouts from the crowd when the swipe was drawn in Game 4 were crazy. You could hear it echoing, and Casey looked so defeated, but he held on, didn't tilt, or at least didn't tilt to the point where he played poorly, and beat one of his least favored matchups possible to make his way into the quarterfinals. Definitely go watch it. It was fun to see. And next week, formerly known as Copa America, HCT Buenos Aires is coming up this weekend. It's definitely worth watching. A lot of really good qualified players. Thoughts, gentlemen?
Sounds like a crazy game. I wish I would have gotten to see it more. The only things that I've really seen from both of these tournaments that you talked about was the Trollden video, and I saw lots of Pogo Rogo bunnies getting shuffled into decks. So I should go back and check out that game to watch, because it sounds like a lot of fun. And since you asked me to, I fact checked you, and it was actually somewhat difficult to find this, but you are right that Casey and Seiko were both in top 10 for season 2. I don't know where that puts them overall, because I couldn't find a spreadsheet that has both of them combined, but I definitely saw them very high up in season 1 too. So I have to imagine that their overall is very high.
Yeah, these are some really incredible players at the top of their game, and I think watching that match, you can kind of see the reason that Seiko was even in a position to draw a swipe is because he set it up and saying, this is the only card that will matter. I know I have to get really lucky, but I have to allow myself to get lucky. And Casey did the same thing. I mean, Miracle, in the early game, you kind of just have to develop and hope, but part of it was the deck building, part of it was the sequencing, and he managed to not play into Unleash the Hounds, which Seiko didn't end up having, but could have very well flipped that game in the last minute, and it really worked out for him. So props to both of these players for a match well played and a really exciting one to watch. And that's all we got for the tournaments. Now, my understanding is we have a couple reviews. Appa, you want to read those for us after I play this soundbite?
Yes.
Whoa, you're the most heavy metal thing I've ever seen!
So we have 2 reviews this week. Do you know where they came from, Hat? Do they come from
iTunes.
iTunes? Both of them from iTunes? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So the first one is from TBen24, and it's titled Amazing Hearthstone Podcast. And it says, Concede is one of the best Hearthstone podcasts. The hosts are knowledgeable and informative on all things Hearthstone and make the competitive aspects of the game relatable to all listeners. From covering tournaments and game meta to the more casual and fun aspects of the game, the hosts are amazing. In addition to their knowledge of the game, the hosts combine an amazing sense of humor, provide relatable experiences, and provide great general life advice. Oh, wow. So we're turning into a life coaching podcast here. I like it. The podcast also has a great community, and the hosts are fully engaged in support of the community. My only regrets are that I do not have more time to dedicate to the community, and that I did not provide this review earlier. The podcast is a must download and listen to each week for any Hearthstone player. Thanks. We appreciate it. All those kind words a lot. We definitely try and engage with our community as much as possible, and the best way to do that is in our Discord. And our
I
second
want to
review
just
is
I want to propose maybe a
Okay.
name change a bit. Let's change our podcast to Coin. Stay in the game. You're doing fine.
just have our logo be like Bob Ross holding the coin.
Yeah.
Like you're doing just fine.
Yes.
It's okay. You made a misplay. Just turn it into a happy little tree.
Yes. Coin. There's no mistakes. Only happy little learning lessons. Just rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah. So our second review is by Nataku over OW. And it's titled Amazingly Insightful. The host of this podcast. Hold on. Let me restart. I lost my train of thought. Or I lost where I was. The hosts of this podcast are always very insightful with their analysis and experiences in the world of Hearthstone. I always look forward to their conversations and look into the current deck archetypes in Hearthstone's ladder meta and tournament meta.
Thanks.
Yeah, so we definitely appreciate these reviews. They help us on iTunes and other podcast applications you may use. You can leave reviews or write us emails. The reviews help a lot for helping people find us. If somebody's just starting to get into the game, they may not find a podcast that's right for them. Then the more reviews we have and the more people can see what our podcast is about, we may be kind of a right fit for them, considering we try and make the competitive side of the game more accessible to people, and we also try and cater to those who may not be as experienced in the game as well. So these reviews definitely help a lot. We really appreciate all the kind words.
And they just help us because we get a lot of love and we really appreciate it, but these reviews just kind of show us that some of the people that don't necessarily have the time to be in our Discord and converse with us on a first-hand basis, like T-Ben said, just seeing these reviews means a lot to us, and I just feel very grateful that people took the time out of their day to write these for us. So thank you to these two and everybody else who's written a review.
I don't have a good soundbite, so thanks everyone. Let's go dexplanate, which is a verb I just made up for do dexplanations. Okay.
Those have to be some of my favorite moments of the podcast. Whenever Hat either like
Just
spits out
misses,
something-
just
like throws something out there, like he throws a ball in the air and he expects one of us to catch it and just lands on the ground in front of our feet, and then he's like, "Okay."
If you
And he
think
meets
my
up, hits a
expectation,
bumper, and then it's the next segment.
if you think that my expectation at this point is to be humored, you are very wrong because life has proven over and over again to dial that down. This isn't for you guys anymore. This is for me. And I will dexplain it all by myself if I have to.
All right. Luckily, you won't have to.
Yeah, luckily, I get to talk to you guys a little bit more about the meta. So I've been playing a fair bit, but I don't think I've been playing quite as much as you guys. So I'm really interested to see kind of what you guys have been seeing out on the ladder. I mean, it's still really early in the meta. As Hat was talking about earlier, things are just constantly changing. So I figure we go over kind of the decks that we expect to see, decks you might want to consider playing, and maybe some of your guys' thoughts about why you should be playing these decks, and then decks you might get surprised by that are out on ladder, and then decks that might not be good enough anymore, even if they have traditionally or were doing well kind of right as the set came out. So let's start with the ones you should expect to see, and let me know if this is what you guys have been seeing. Mally Druid, Zoo Warlock, Egg Hunter, Odd Rogue, and even Warlock. When I was playing this weekend, this was a fairly accurate representation of what I was seeing, with the exception of the last 2 games I played to get to Legend, because one of those was against Spiteful Priest. But anyway, is this what you guys are seeing? Let's go with Hat. I know you've played a lot over the past 2 days. Is this what you were seeing when you got Legend with your Warrior deck?
Yeah, it's starting to shift even more now. I actually saw a tweet earlier today from Ze, who hit top 20 with Odd Paladin, saying, yeah, well, I'm just farming all the Odd Rogues and the Zoos because they're not playing Dreadlord anymore, but if I see more Druids, once people start playing Druid again, I'll stop playing Odd Paladin. And when you think about that sentence where we were a week ago, when people start playing Druid again, I'll play something else, that's a crazy sentence. But I agree, I didn't see as many Druids as I expected. Still a good number of Mally and actually a few Togwaggles. But I did see a good number of Zoo, a lot of Odd Rogues, and the even Warlocks really picked up, as did the Hunters. A lot of Hunters, some Spell, and mostly Death Rattle or Egg Hunters more than anything, but good number of spells. And some mid-range, I guess, like whatever deck plays Crackling Razor Maw. I really didn't think things would change so quickly. There's been a few Odd Paladins here and there, but it's been mostly, these are the decks that were touted as the early pillars of the format, and I don't know if they'll still be around in the same quantities, but they're definitely still ones that people should be planning for with the decks they're playing.
Yeah, it was really weird for me. On Saturday, I saw a ton of Zoo, which wasn't weird, but I saw a good amount of Spell Hunter, which I wasn't expecting. And then on Sunday, all of a sudden, I just ran into a streak of Odd Rogues. Just so many Odd Rogues in a row. I was like, "What the heck is going on? Where did all these come from?" And then Blue Spartan said something about Vicious Syndicate, etc., etc. Odd Rogue's really good. And then I haven't played a ton over the last couple days. So what have you seen in the last few days, Appa?
I've seen all kinds of stuff. I've seen basically all of the decks we have in the explanations listed here, and I think that a lot of them are not as good as people expected or were claiming them to be or expected them to be. For pretty much my prime example, I would use a Zoo, because whenever the expansion first came out, Zoo. Okay, we just clip this soundbite afterwards, and this just can be applied to every single meta that's ever existed. Zoo's good. Okay, moving on. Zoo's always going to be a reasonable deck. It's never going to be like super busted unless it has Undertaker in it.
Hat always brings up Ungoro or some random set where Zoo wasn't the best. So Zoo isn't always good, but Zoo's always good.
I feel personally attacked right now. What's going on?
You still got Flame Imps and Life Tap. You can still win games.
Zoo was the best deck in that meta for one day. Brewski hit rank 1 Legend with it on day 1, and then lost to Quest Rogue with Morose in it, which is exactly what you should expect from Zoo after day number 1 of losing to superior strategies regardless of their marginal cards. Zoo has had its ups and downs. There was a dark time after Imp Gang Boss rotated out where you couldn't even play it, but Zoo is fine. The cards are good right now. It is not above a 50% win rate. It is a very overrepresented deck. It is still a perfectly reasonable strategy, and it is not broken.
Yeah, another kind of boogeyman I saw people claiming like design mistake or limiting design space in the future, or this card's no fun to play against, were the Mechathune decks. And surprise, Mechathune is gonna beat your real slow, dirtily control deck that doesn't kill your opponent until turn 27. But it's gonna lose to literally everything else. And that's what we found out that it does. Is the Mechathune
Yeah.
decks lose to all of the other things.
Mechathune felt a lot like Shutterwalk did when Witchwood first came out, in that people were playing it, everybody was complaining about it a lot, but it took just a little bit longer before it kind of faded out, and it seems to be mostly gone. I definitely lost to my first one this weekend, uh, but for the most part, I have not been playing strategies that really lose to it. So and I think that's the case for a lot of people. But if the meta, which seems to be getting a bit slower, continues to get slower, maybe they can make a rise again, or maybe there's an adjustment that needs to be done, like was done to Shutterwalk, that eventually made it into a deck that a lot of people ended up playing.
Yeah,
But
I think the metagame as it's shaping up right now is looking really fine. It looks, again, like I said earlier, kind of reminiscent of what Witchwood at the end of its kind of cycle, standard metagame cycle looked like, except with a few new things. I think that it's a slower meta than what we're used to overall. It's more slow, kind of mid-rangey with combo finishes, or just a slower mid-range style is where you want to be. I do think the card Spreading Plague is very limiting in terms of what you can actually play in this metagame, because you have to include Void Rippers in your aggressive decks, and you also have to include either Mossy Horrors or Blood Knights, and Spreading Plague is still a really messed up card, and it's very, very limiting in terms of what decks you can actually play to beat Druid. You can't really what you're supposed to be able to do against Druid is develop an early board with tempo and then leverage that early board into forcing them to remove it while you resolve bigger and bigger threats. And then right now they just don't care about that because they can naturalize your bigger threats and recoup the disadvantage with card draw, and then just Spreading Plague and gain 35 life. So I think Spreading Plague is actually going to be a fairly significant problem in terms of what you can play in an aggressive kind of style, because it requires basically running two Void Rippers in your deck, whereas you also need to have answers for Giggling Inventors as well. And I think if we didn't have the Spreading Plague and we just had to worry about Inventors, we would have much more aggro decks right now. Not to say we won't have aggro decks moving forward, but I think they're going to be hindered pretty significantly by the prevalence of how good Druid is and how many archetypes Druid will probably have in tier 1 and 2.
so then I'm looking at this list here we have of decks you might consider playing. I don't know how these stack up so well against Druid, but I do think that against the current metagame, these all sound pretty solid. We have Control Warlock, Tempo Mage, Odd Paladin, and Spell Hunter. I know Tempo Mage and Odd Paladin. Odd Paladin was doing fairly well against Druid, but I know Tempo Mage does not do very good against Druid, especially if they ever draw Malfurion. Uh, but Control Warlock's pretty interesting. I was playing a lot of Q Block, which I liked having the Doom Guards because at that point there was not a lot of weapon removal, and Doom guarding the people trying to do cute stuff like Mechathune, or just in general the slower decks, having the Doom Guards in there was very powerful. But I could see that if weapon removal starting to come back in, that Control Warlock makes a lot more sense. And then Spell Hunter, I don't know how your Warlock your Druid matchup is. I
Your
imagine it's not great.
your Druid matchup with that deck's all right. It's not fantastic, but you do have really early starts with powered up spellstones and flanking strikes and stuff like that that can kind of get out of hand for them pretty quickly. Because 3/3s, a board full of 3/3s is answered by them particularly effectively, because a Spreading Plague doesn't really weaken them all that much to be killed with just a swipe unless you bump into him twice. And the
Or you have a
Spellstone,
Thalnos.
yeah, or you have Thalos, and then the wolves plus a Deathstalker Rexar activation, like the trigger when you play them, will clear Spreading Plague. And Secret Plans actually made that deck a lot more consistent. It made the Spellstone starts a lot more readily available. And I think that deck actually is going to be pretty good moving forward. I played with it on the first day, and it felt really, really, really strong with Secret Plans in it. But again, that's just my limited anecdotal experience. But I
Yeah,
can see how it can have game against Druid. I'm not sure it's favored, but I'm sure it's probably close in the matchup. Like not too much swinging in one way or the other.
yeah, I know that Subject 9 Spell Hunter was something that I played against and was getting very frustrated by because I felt like it should be a matchup I can win, but the oddities of all the secrets that they were including in the list was making it really hard for me to enact my game plan as Q block, which I thought was pretty interesting. But it's I kind of like that. I like Odd Paladin right now. If you're going against a lot of aggressive decks, it just kind of, if you're seeing a lot of aggressive decks, it feels like where you want to be. Maybe I don't know. Hat, you kind of put a lot of these lists in here. I assume you've played a lot of these, or at least against a lot of these. What was kind of your thought process behind these the decks that you should consider playing?
So these are decks that some players are performing well with, and I'm not really sure why in some cases, but they're working. I would not have put Tempo Mage here. I would have put it down in the section of decks that aren't good, except Asmo is currently top 20 legend with it. Now, Asmo is very, very good, but it's a very powerful anti-not Zoo Warlock deck. It's not great against Druid. It's okay. It's good against slower rogues. It's good against big spell mage. I think you beat Togwaggle. You probably don't beat Malygos. And you farm Shutterwalk Shaman with Tempo Mage. So I think there's something to be said for it. As far as Odd Paladin, with all the people that are trying to counter Druid right now, which I think is quite a few people, and with the popularity of Odd Rogue, I think that is the main reason to play Odd Paladin, just as anti-Odd Rogue. And then looking at the numbers, it does really well against Death Rattle Hunter, and it does really, really well against Death Rattle Rogue, which I think is probably not a deck after a while. I don't know. There's been a lot of players that have done a good job of predicting the next step of the meta. Like we're talking about, where we are today and where we were last week could not be more different. There are a lot of players that are just about a half step or a full step ahead that are playing decks like these. Control Warlock was actually pretty popular about 3-4 days in, just because Demonic Project means you get to slow down. Sipiwi 94 was top 10 with a list that didn't even have Rin in it, just a bunch of taunts and 2 Gnome Feratus. And Gun to Fire was top 5 legend with it. Asmo is currently top 20 with Tempo Mage. Zez currently top 20 with Odd Paladin. There are various builds of Spell Hunter and Subject 9 Hunter, which is a very different deck. It seems like it's the same, but it's really, really not. You take away that kind of Rockdalar inevitability in the Secret Plans package, and instead you're just keeping your opponent off kilter for about 5 turns, while you develop immediate pressure, and the Spell Stones come with an Arcane Tyrant. You Stitch Tracker either Subject 9 or Arcane Tyrant, because you want to put together this crazy big board quickly and then keep your opponent from being able to deal with it with their board. There's something to that. It's just a little bit faster, has a little bit more pressure, and gets rid of some of that later game inevitability, and that's fine. So, I don't know, I would consider playing a deck that targets what you might be seeing in a way that you aren't thinking about. You don't have to beat everything. You have to beat what you're seeing, and you have to be able to anticipate what people are going to do. I think Odd Rogue has seen a really big jump in popularity at Zoo's expense. I have seen way fewer Zoos and Malygos Druids past couple days than I did well before that, which includes also why I was playing a good bit of Odd Warrior. I was dealing with Rogue and Paladin. Like, you know what, I'll suit up Warrior, and it worked really well. So there's a lot of ability to pivot here and kind of anticipate the next step in the meta or whatever you think you're going to face and be really successful with a strategy that isn't being advertised quite as much.
So you were saying that you were playing a bit of Odd Warrior, and you were playing a bit of Control Warrior before that. I'm kind of interested in that decision to move to Odd Warrior. Was it just to try something new, or do you think that Odd Warrior brings something that Control Warrior was lacking?
It was much harder to beat the non-Malyghost Druids with regular Control Warrior. Even though shooting for 8 matters a lot, Togwaggle was a really, really difficult matchup, even with the Skulking Geist, if you didn't get there. Because you really had to make sure you had the Skulking Geist, and Togwaggle is a little bit faster. All they do is just jam card draw. And Mally has to sculpt a perfect hand, and you can kind of gain a little bit of life to get away from that while applying some pressure. But I didn't have any difficulty. I had a lot more difficulty against Togwaggle, and so I saw the odd list that seemed to be better situated against multiple flavors of Druid and did really well against the other aggressive decks. And the Azalina got me. I really wanted to play with Azalina, and I tried it out, and it was fantastic. So I was really just trying it on a whim after the bonus episode on Monday, and then I won 4 in a row, and I was legend. So, hey.
Hey, there you go. So that's a deck you might be surprised to see on ladder. Have you had to play the mirror yet? I imagine that's not.
No, I don't. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Now I have a headache. Ugh, it just seems miserable. I was playing a bit of Mally Druid, though, and I'll say that Appa just typed this in the notes. I'm going to shamelessly steal it from him. I was playing Mally Druid, and I played against the first Haunt Druid I'd seen in a while, and that matchup feels miserable. Like, unwinnably miserable as the Mally Druid.
You have to 20 mana combo him most of the time from my experience playing it before Boomsday came out. I imagine it's somewhat similar now, except they probably play Biology Project. So
and they take advantage of it much better than you do.
Yeah, because you have less time to draw cards to combo them.
Do you want me to just segue into my thoughts that I wrote down in the show notes?
Yes.
Sure, I want to. You have some good thoughts in here. Why don't you go into these?
Yeah, so I wrote down a list of quote unquote off meta decks that I expect to see put up some results moving forward, whether that be in tournaments or on ladder. I think this will probably be a direction that's some of these decks will be in a direction that people will be looking to gain an edge on ladder and tournaments, I think. And I think Spell Hunter will be one. I don't think a lot of people are experimenting with it right now because it's already a known quantity from last meta, and I think we're still in a place where players are looking for new things instead of kind of going back and refining older things, with the exception of Malygos Druid and even Warlock and that kind of stuff, because Spell Hunter is not very interesting in what it got. It just got a 1 mana card, and that's about it. But I think we'll start to see people gravitate towards that a little bit. I also think we'll start seeing more Miracle Rogue without the stupid 3/4 elephant. I think that card's bad in the deck.
Dislike this comment.
I think that card is not very good in the deck. I think it's very weak, and I think you should be playing if that's what you're trying to do. What the elephant's trying to do is it's trying to generate more threats over the course of the game, and with that you have to have the Faldori Strider played while you have the elephant on the board. And if you don't have it, it's just a 3/4 spider tank, which I mean is serviceable sometimes.
Yes, it is.
Pretty good.
It's a spider tank.
Really freaking good.
It's serviceable sometimes, but in the matchups where you're trying to win, it just doesn't do anything. It's just 3/4. I think you should be playing questing adventurers over this stupid elephant in the Miracle Rogue deck. And like it only interacts with one card in the Miracle Rogue deck, and I think that's far too narrow and a little too weak. I think it's a card that people are experimenting with in the Miracle Rogue list, and it feels great when it works. But I think it's a little too weak, and I think it'll start rotating out of lists moving forward. But I think we will see Miracle Rogue with maybe questing adventurers, or maybe even like sprint rogues that we saw at the end of the Witchwood meta. I think we'll see a little bit of a rotation back to that in terms of rogue, and also quest rogue. We talked about that a little earlier. That one's a little more polarized, so you might see less on ladder and more in tournaments, but it's still pretty good. Odd Paladin, like Hat was saying, it's a really nice answer to Odd Rogue, as that matchup's close to unlosable. It's so good for Odd Paladin. And Odd Paladin's just a very strong linear strategy with really good starts. And then Taunt Druid. I think Taunt Druid is going to be quote unquote the next big thing in that it's already been a big thing many months ago, and it's still a really strong deck, but I think it is the Druid deck that you will want to be playing in probably the next couple weeks or so, because people are going to be playing lots of Malagos Druid, they're going to be playing even Warlock, they're going to be playing Zoo, they're going to be playing all these kinds of decks, and Taunt Druid is the deck that beats the other Druid decks and also gets to abuse Biology Project the most, and Biology Project is a messed up card, and Mally Druid can't really abuse it that much because there's not a lot of room in the deck, and the way your deck functions, it can't really take advantage of it as well as a ramp style Druid deck can. And Taunt Druid gets to play that ramp style. It also gets to play Master O card, and that is also another messed up card. So I think Taunt Druid will likely be a way you should be approaching the ladder if you're looking for something that beats Malagos and is also really strong against most other things. And people aren't playing Polymorph, Geist, or Hex right now very much. And that's partially the reason why Taunt Druid rotated out of favor at the end of the Witchwood meta, is that it was getting really punished by Skulking Geist removing its naturalizes, so you couldn't combo Hadronox, and then it was getting its Witching Hours, resurrecting sheeps and frogs. And I know that people aren't playing those cards very much right now, so there's definitely a lot of potential to be had playing Taunt Druid, and I recommend basically anybody listening right now, if they enjoy Druid, they enjoy Biology Project, they enjoy recruiting 40-something mana worth of stuff on like turn 5, to pick up Taunt Druid and take it for a spin on ladder.
I was going to respond intelligently, but I'm still just not over you talking crap about my elephant. Like,
yeah,
I just kind
me
of,
too.
I just kind of stuck in
Me
that.
and
Like,
me and Hat agree on a rogue issue.
All right,
That's-
it's a cool card and it's powerful when it works, but when it doesn't, I'd rather have any other 3-drop in the game in my deck.
it's just a spider tank. It's all I want. It's just a thing with 4 butt that I play on turn 3 and trade stuff or hit a face with, and sometimes it has marginal upside. And
I also like
I'm
my
good.
3-drops with 4 butt to grow into 12/12s when I don't have the spider as a follow-up.
Okay, if I could play all these cards, I would. But some decks that we're seeing are cutting SI to fit in augmented Elec, just because.
Yeah,
How many
I
times do you
think
play
should
SI on
also be
3?
I think you should also be playing SI, because I mean Zoo's prevalent enough and Odd Rogue's prevalent enough that you really need that turn 3 swing with Backstab SI and a good amount of matchups. I think you've won at least one in your list. At least that's how I'm building it right now. I'm playing a questing adventure. I actually have 2 in my list, but that was from really early on in the meta where Zoo was every other game. I'll probably go 2 questing, 1 SI, but that's how I'm building the deck.
I like Elephant. You play it on turn 3 and you don't need anything else. Just like you don't need prep in your opening hand, and you can just play Elephant on 3 and it's good. And then
All
it
right,
trades
All right,
stuff.
you
Let me
best
pitch
you
this-
best
let me-
Czechoslovakia before you Czechoslovakia is all I'm
All right,
saying.
let me pitch this to you, Hat. Whenever you're playing 2 questings, makes it much better to keep prep in your opening hand. All right, are you with me here?
I was already with you. I'm just saying, at this point, Miracle Rogue is it's really just a mid-range tempo deck. It's so much just a mid-range tempo deck, and you're just playing efficient minion on 3, 4, 5, and 6 is really what you're looking to do. 6 is probably 2 minions. But I think that Elec is a must-kill, because if you have Strider, it's crazy good, and I have had opponents that saw a 4/4 Edwin and a 3/4 Elec and killed the Elec and left the Edwin alive, because the chance of that follow-up Strider is so strong that they have to act as though you have it or risk being punished so severely for a card that you already actively mulligan for. I think the upside is worth it. I really, really do. I like questing, don't get me wrong, but just a single tall minion is not as worth it in the Giggling Inventor metagame. Like, it just isn't as good as it used to be.
I think it's worth it in the Spreading Plague metagame, which I mean I think we're gonna very quickly get to in the next like week once people stop playing nonsense, just pick up the good busted druid decks with Biology Project and all of the really broken druid cards that we have access to right now.
But
Also, if
Miracle
you're not
beats that
playing
deck,
druid
right?
right now,
Miracle beats
you
that
should
deck.
what?
Miracle beats Druid. Like, I'd rather be playing Miracle. I think that, maybe not Mally, but I think any of the minion-based Druid decks, I'd rather play Miracle. I don't think the 3-drop that you're playing really matters as much. Questing is not the difference in that matchup.
Oh, I find it matters a ton. I run out of threats very frequently against Druid. It usually comes down to my last big minion and like being the difference, because they run 2 naturalizes, they run 2 spellstones, which are upgraded very frequently, especially with Ferocious Howl on the list. They run Branching Paths for a ton of armor. They run the Spreading Plagues, which weaken your board. They run the Malfurion, which also weakens your board. And then they get to clear you with cards like Swipe, Starfall, those kinds of things. And then you're left with no board unless you have extra tall minions. Like, I don't really want more 4/4s in a world where people are playing Starfalls and spell powered up swipes and those kinds of things.
But okay, let me pitch
I'd-
something to you. Let me pitch it to you.
All right.
Imagine all your minions get kind of cleared, right? You're kind of low on minion density. And then on turn 7, you play a 3/4 and then a 4/4, which shuffles 6 spiders into your deck. Imagine, and then you can start drawing cards and just kind of meter 4/4s out and spiders and just keep that constant pressure on, as opposed to a top deck 3-mana 2/2.
Okay. Which one of those did I not play the turn before, and why did I hold it?
Because it's you run out of mana when you choke your hands with cards. As Miracle Rogue in the mid game, you kind of accumulate these threat density. If I have that on 3 and 4, right, I'm doing that on 3 and 4 every time, or Hench on 3, and I save the Augmented Relic, totally fine. But later in the game, once I'm getting to the point where I'm sprinting, once I'm getting to the point where I'm building up a board that requires answers and I'm not overdeveloping into the Spreading Plague, right, I've got 2 or 3 major threats. Then they answer it, and then you shuffle 6 spiders into your deck, and all of a sudden your sprints just become supercharged with threat density.
Yes, in this scenario, it's good because it worked. I agree. Whenever it works with the elephant, whenever it works with the spiders, it's strong. When it doesn't, it's terrible.
Yeah, I think we
Couldn't
won't
same
belabor
thing
this
be
point
said
too much longer. I
for-
just think you're
yeah.
underestimating the impact of a good 3-mana minion that has upside in the later game.
Yeah, the same thing could just be said for questing. When it works, it's good, and when it doesn't, it looks terrible.
I mean, but it just rewards you for playing the game, just with any of your cards. It works with 28 of your other cards. Alec works with 2 of them.
Okay. Well, either way, let's see. So we kind of went over a bunch of stuff. What else do we want to say? I want to bring up Good Shaman, which is a creation of Ike, and him, Zalay, and Crane were all holding top 10 legend for almost an entire week with playing this Good Shaman deck. And I don't know how much of that is just 3 amazing players playing together, or if the deck's actually good. It seems like if the metagame gets somewhat more control-y, this is a deck that generates just a ton of value and has these sticky boards that's really hard for them to deal with. I think it might have some legs, and it's a really, really hard deck to play correctly. So even though a lot of people are playing it and not having as much success, I think that's just them not being familiar enough with it, and I think it could be quite good. I don't know. Have you guys seen this deck at all? Do you know what deck I'm talking about? The Shaman deck with both Death Knight
So,
or both hero cards?
You call it Good Shaman. I know they call it Good Shaman. I cannot buy a win with it, and I just don't know the mechanism on which it attacks the game. I don't know if it's trying to be the best mid-game deck that try to be the best board deck. I don't really know what it's trying to do that I think it does better than other decks.
It's playing a mid-range shaman game that wants to close out with Bloodlust, but instead of that, you play the Hagatha while you have a board for some reason, and then you play like Thrall without Bloodlust in your deck. I'm not on board with this one. I'm gonna have a hot take and say that Ike's beating people with it because it was the beginning of the meta, and then the deck's not gonna be very good at all moving forward. Because I've seen it, I've played with it. It feels so medium. It feels so medium, unless you like really high roll your evolve. the unstable evolution.
Well, Bot, have you played with it? What does it do that we're not seeing? Because you seem to have a high opinion of it. How do you win those games where you think a different deck wouldn't have done it? Because I'm really curious to see. I'm missing something about it, and clearly you have some level of buy-in with it. What do you think could help the listeners and us, your co-hosts, win games with this deck? How do you approach the games?
Okay, so I personally have not played a ton of games with it, but I have watched a ton. I have watched hours and hours of Zalay's stream where him and Ike and Crane are talking through the plays with it, and they come up with these ideas, and the way that they execute the games are just extremely well thought out, and they put themselves into winning positions with this deck that I don't think that most people could get themselves into. It actually looks like we have a deck linked in our Discord chat here by Lemon, and this deck is just very similar to the deck that they're playing. So I don't remember why this got linked in our own chat, but
12 wins.
this is essentially. I mean, it got 12 wins. It's essentially the same deck. It plays Thrall, it plays Hagatha. Essentially, what it's doing is it has a density of value cards of being able to both play Thrall and play Hagatha and play Shutterwalk. It has this density of just high value cards that survives the early game and then generates these board states through Thrall or through Hagatha of generating this value that can grind out even the most controlling of decks. Hagatha is just very good at giving you enough resources to be able to outvalue the late game control decks, and also Thrall just making crazy minions. Fungal Mancer making these board states. There's just a lot of stuff to do. There's always lots of decisions to make with this deck, and it really, really, really seems to benefit people who can develop a long game strategy where they know their matchups really well. I think that's probably the thing that is most useful for this deck is if you know how you're going to win the game starting at the start of the game, you can play out the game in such a way that you're going to have a good chance of coming out on top.
Yeah, maybe I just need to play more games with the deck. Uh, or maybe just watch them play. Maybe I'm playing it a different way, but the way I'm usually playing it is I just kind of get a wide board and then can't really close because I don't really have burst. Like I'm generating incremental value, but then I just like get like over the top dunked on by like ultimate infestation or something like that.
I mean,
Yeah,
what
they
I'm
were-
hearing is that Bot is saying, get good, win games. And
Yeah.
it's advice that I can buy into. And you're talking about, again, 3 of the better Hearthstone minds working collaboratively to all hit
Yeah.
top 10 legend. There's something here. I want to point out the list that we linked from Lemon HS, who got 12 wins in the Brawliseum today. This is a Thunderhead deck. It's got Zaps, it's got Lightning Bolts, it's got Voltaic Burst, it's got Lightning Storms. And
That's
it's
sweet.
it's looks awesome. Very different from Ike's list, because Ike's list, Ike is very clearly building around an unstable evolution package. It doesn't play anywhere near as many overload cards. It has hexes. It's got the Hagatha in there, or no, it's got Kalamos in there. It's got an elemental package. It's trying to generate value and pivot flexibly between multiple game plans. I think that Lemon's deck is trying to build a much more focused board-centric deck style and uses Thunderhead to kind of flip it in a way that Ike is depending on the player playing it being capable of foreseeing these game states and aligning them, whereas Lemon has a little bit more of that mid-game power and a little bit of a better curve from what I can see because of how strong these mid-game minions are.
I guess Ike's deck reminds me so much of the Shutterwalk Shaman deck I used to hit Legend a few seasons ago, and that's why it probably speaks to me so much, because it wasn't the full combo version, and it was just this mid-rangey deck that played out in a bunch of different ways, and is probably why it speaks to me so much. But one of the key things, and it's a very small thing, but one thing that they said as they were streaming is they were making fun of a lot of people for calling the deck bad, because they were saying these people are calling the deck bad and then they're keeping Firefly against Druid. And that told me a lot just in that sentence of just yes, this deck is going to look really bad if you play against Druid and you keep a Firefly, because that is a card that most people keep in their opening hands, but is not good in the Druid matchup because Firefly just gives them 2 spreading plagues, essentially, for the most part. I mean, you're
Yeah.
probably going to draw it eventually, but you want to be drawing it after you already have something like a Thrall, so you can start evolving it and get out of range. That's a card that's Thrall is a card that's very good against Druid because it turns all of our mediocre minions that they're trying to spreading plague into things that can kill their spreading plague minions.
I was not
Yeah, I
emotionally prepared for that level of reminder about how much better some people are at this game, because that's a really insightful statement,
Yeah,
and
same.
yet one that I never would have even considered thinking about as a decision. Like, it wouldn't have been a decision for me. I see the Firefly, I would not click that card in my mulligan. It would just stay there every single game, and I would probably lose way more of those games because of course you keep Firefly. When else do you want it? Well, there's an answer to that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go play some more games of this deck after we get done recording.
All right, what else do we? I guess decks that have not been good enough after them: Stabilized, Togwaggle, Mechathune, Miracle Rogue, and Death Rattle Rogue. Togwaggle's having a resurgence, but it's in the Malagos Druid list.
That
Mechathune,
doesn't
I
count.
haven't.
That does not count.
It doesn't. Mallywaggle doesn't count.
Mallywaggle counts. Togwaggle as a dedicated strategy. I haven't seen any decks that are just straight Togwaggle. It's a fantastic plan B, but it's a plan B, right? You put it in your Malagos Druid decks because it takes 2 card slots. So you take out the Lich King and you take out one other tech card and you fit in
Alex usually, right?
Yeah, Alex, Lich King, and then usually 1 Ferocious Howl to fit in the Dream Petal Florist. That's what Tyler did. And it's just, you are still playing the really powerful Malagos Druid list, and you also have this backup plan that's pretty strong in some matchups. But I don't know if you can depend on just Togwaggle as a strategy anymore, even though it was really good the first couple days.
Okay. Yeah, and it felt like when you linked me the Miracle list, it felt pretty good when I was playing it, but I guess it just now was not the meta for it. Maybe it evolves in a way where it becomes better, but I'm wondering if it does, because Miracle's traditionally been an anti-controlish deck, and I wonder if Death Rattle Rogue just does it better, and if Death Rattle Rogue does it better, then Death Rattle Hunter probably does it better than Death Rattle Rogue. I don't know if does that make sense to you, Appa?
Well, I mean,
Or not?
along that line of reasoning, then if Death Rattle Hunter does that better, then Miracle Rogue is the better Rogue deck, right? Because that matchup's fine for Rogue.
Cosmic Brain. Galaxy Brain. It's... Yes, but...
We're so deep in theory right now.
Yes,
It's
but...
absurd.
So to reset back to reality, I think the reason why Miracle Rogue is bad is because the win rate against Zoo Warlock over the last 3 days is 20%, and against Odd Rogue is 34%. So maybe don't play Miracle right now.
Look, man, all I'm saying is we got elephants and not things that deal 2 damage when they come into play against Zoo. All right?
No, we have questing adventurers, don't we now?
Yeah, we got 2 SIs and a questing, and I'd smash Zoo on EU. Like, I don't think I've lost to that deck yet.
I'm just saying, I think the numbers, the way they work out right now, I'm not saying that you don't smash Zoo, I'm saying it's probably not in Miracle's favor, and Miracle has historically been good the first couple days, and then after the meta stabilizes, if it's the right meta for it. But it's like Zoo, except it drops a lot harder as people build decks that are stronger in the format, as they streamline more, because Miracle's a pretty streamlined strategy that preys on greed, and as the greed kind of goes away, which it has in record time in this meta, when you're playing against 2 3-mana 4/4 imps on turn 3, or against a pointy dagger for 2 to your face on turn 2, it's not really where you want to be. And looking at the numbers here, Miracle Rogue's overall win rate is 39%. Maybe it's not about the elephant.
Yeah, but I like the elephant.
I do too. His name is
I like
Stampy,
the
and I
elephant
loved
too.
him.
Is his name really Stampy?
No, that's a Simpsons quote.
Oh.
Yeah.
But I also play Academic Espionage with the elephant, and I get lots of 1-mana cards.
All right.
All right, we're
In
off the
casual.
I'm done here.
In casual, I want to point out.
Yes,
It's
in casual.
the only deck that I want to point out that I have played that I thought would be good and then thought wasn't good and then thought was good again is Token Druid. And Token Druid I think is actually still pretty good. And there are a couple builds going around. The one I like the most is Geizes, which plays Living Mana and Whispering Woods and Spreading Plague and Giggling Inventor and Mulch Muncher and Floop's Glorious Gloop. And I managed to have a turn where I went Gloop, attack, Branching Paths for +2 attack, attack 2 more times, UI, Power of the Wild, go. I won that game. It's a good game. I don't think that Gloop is always good, but because Gaiza's build has such this crazy density of minions, your first minion builder, which is going to be turn 4 or 5, is going to generate you more mana with the Gloop because you expect it to die, as opposed to the old school Token Druid builds, which really you only have 4 board filling effects, more if you count the teachers, which you don't. That list doesn't even play, and you're expecting that board to stick or to build. But when you're expecting the board to die, Gloop becomes a lot better at helping you develop the second board.
So you made a board and you attacked with it, and you got to play this card called Gloop.
Well, I attacked
Floop's
into
Glorious
I
Gloop.
attacked into 5 1/5 Scarabs, and I killed them all, and then I replaced my board the same turn and drew 5 cards and dealt 5 damage. It was a Whispering Woods that turned into a bunch of stuff. So the Whispering Woods on turn 4 wasn't historically good before, but when I used it to clear a bunch of Scarabs and also UI, I felt pretty good about it.
Yeah, I guess. I still don't think that card belongs in that deck. I think the only deck it belongs in is the Cthulhu Druid or Mechathune Druid, but I mean, it's going to have those games where you're going to do that, and then it's going to I will firmly believe it's going to have more games where you just very rarely have a board to be able to generate mana with and have that mana be meaningful. But either way, enough about that. Unless you guys have any more, I think we can head into the outro.
I want to go
No,
ladder
I'm-
so bad right now. I love this meta so much. Like, all this arguing, it's not like I'm arguing because I'm mad. I'm arguing because I love it so much.
Yeah, me too. It's because of my deep love for Miracle Rogue that I talk about elephants. I love him. I love the elephants, but I just don't think I want the elephants in my deck. All right, let's do the outro. I'm starting again. My hot take's coming back.
How long can this go on?
Appa, I want you to know that I'm going to fade your hot take into that outro when I edit the podcast, so you will slowly fade out as Sarah Knight Chain Gang asks you how long this can go on. Just so you're aware, that's coming.
All right, that'll be a good meme.
Yes, I think so. And speaking of good memes, how about the only Gadgetzan auctioneer in the meta is right here, me, Gadgetzan. Thanks to Stefan L for letting us use his cover. Check him out on his channel, link in our show notes. Big thanks to Hearthstone Top Decks, BeerBrick.com for Decklists, and Hearthstone Tournaments on YouTube for tournament VODs. Show notes for this week's episode are on our website, CoinConcede.com. You can support our show at Patreon.com/CoinConcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at Twitch.tv/CoinConcede And big thanks to everyone that's in our chat right now. Join our chats in Discord at Discord.CoinConcede.com. You may be featured in an episode of Discord discussions right into our email at CoinConcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at CoinConcede. If you would like some CC swag, head on over to our new shop at Dad Legend. And we still have a Redbubble at shops.coinconcede.com. We're going to be transitioning over to the Dad Legend store. We have one design right now. Big thanks to our producers, Viriatus, Arrow, and... It's so fluffy! And we also want to take a moment to give a shout out to the Badass Women of Hearthstone. They are hosting a tournament and need help with the funding and support. It is about the 1-year anniversary of our friend Toast the Badger. She passed on about a year ago, and it's been tough, but the Badass Women of Hearthstone are sticking around, and they're doing a great job of putting together this tournament. They really need our support to make sure that it's everything that it can be. So please, head on over there. We'll have a link in the show notes. And now it is time for some coin concedes.
All right, Botticus, you're looking at the camera with a big grin on your face, so I'm gonna let you go first.
So my coin concede this week is to you. Not you two, but you listening, we give a good amount of love to our patrons, and I love them, and we give a good amount of love to the people who leave us reviews, but realistically, I am so thankful that we just have people that every week they download our podcast and listen to it, and they may not join the Discord and they may not leave a review or do any of that, but I just appreciate that there are people out there that take the time to listen to us every week and listen to us ramble on and have our fun little tiffs and discussions about different cards. And I'm just so happy to be on this cast and to have people that so many people that download it every week. So thank you so much for listening, you the listener that's listening right now to this.
Thank you, listener, for listening while we talk about listeners listening to our podcast. Also, gonna second what Botticus said, because listeners are great. That's not to exclude patrons too, because patrons are listeners. Everybody's great who's listening to this right now. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for listening. You make every week that much cooler, because I get to hop on and talk with two fantastic Hearthstone players about a game that I love very dearly and has taken me to really cool places, has let me meet so many awesome people, and has even won me a little bit of money. So that's also extra cool. But I'm just happy with where the podcast is, where Hearthstone is, and yeah, I didn't really have a coin concede written down, so I kind of just coattailed Botticus. So
I
I'm sorry,
kind of
Botticus.
stole yours from the bonus episode. Well, I stole your idea from the bonus episode because I didn't have one. But as always, Hat has his own ideas. So Hat, who's your coin concede?
I'd like to actively not thank the listeners because I want to stand on my own 2 feet. I'm just kidding. Listeners, it's not that I have to thank you, but that's a kind of a hard act to follow. And of course, without you to listen, what would we be talking for? How would we have met each other? How would we all have met you? So thank you for the listening that you give every episode. Even those of you that say, those episodes you talk about making them shorter, keep them 2 hours long. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. We will. But also, I want to say thank you to the Second Dinner devs, the 5 people that struck out on their own. Ben Brode being the most visible, Yong Woo, Mike Schweitzer, Hamilton Chu, and Jamaro Kindred. Thank you very much for what you've given Hearthstone and for what you did for the game that we love. And thank you very much for getting us to the point that we're mad at you for not being in Hearthstone anymore. Because that means that you gave us enough that we don't want to lose you, and for you to contribute as developers to the game that we love in such a significant way that we're upset that we won't have you around anymore, I think speaks a lot to your ability and your engagement as developers. And honestly, shout out to Blizzard. This whole week, they released a new expansion for WoW. It was a very clean launch. My server went down for 20 minutes total in the entire launch on opening day. It was a really, really fun time. The Battle for Azeroth is a fantastic expansion. Big props to my guild for having this really awesome guild party atmosphere of people being leveling all hours of the day, helping each other out, backtracking to get each other leveled up, giving each other gear and materials and whatever it takes to make sure everyone's having a good time. And I have to shout out my lovely girlfriend, Fly That Kite, for putting up with me taking a week off to stay in the house and play both of these video games. Because she had to go to work, and I'm not going to say it sucks to watch someone play video games until 4 in the morning when you have to go to work at 8, but it kind of sucks. So thank you, Kite, for putting up with me and allowing me to hang out and have a good week in front of you while you had to go be working, working stiff. Yeah, that's all I got.
Sounds like an episode.
It does.
Sounds like a podcast. So where can people find you, Botticus?
You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at BotticusHS, and I want to apologize because I said I was going to stream last weekend, but I didn't because I was tilting off really hard at losing a bunch. I thought, I'll just play some games on Saturday, and then got really tilted, so didn't stream it all that day. But I might stream, and if you want to see if I'm going to stream, you can follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Botticus.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Appa_HS. And you can also find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/AppaHS. And I've had kind of a streaming blackout for the past couple weeks, but that's because I've been getting school and everything in order and also working. So as soon as the school semester starts up again, I will have much more free time. As weird as that sounds, I'll have much more free time because I won't be working during the week all the time because I'll have some of those days off. So I'll be streaming at various points. And Hat is posting a picture of an elephant in the show notes.
I mean, it's in the room. We have to talk about it.
Oh my god.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, the end of this episode is great.
Now you understand, Appa, what Bot has been going through for multiple episodes because you've learned I don't let go of these things. And if you wish to engage in pointless show arguments with me, you can find me on Twitter at RidiculousHat and Discord wherever Hearthstone is discussed at RidiculousHat. On Twitch, twitch.tv/RidiculousHat. I failed to stream this past Monday because of who I am as a person and my ability to comment and say I'm going to stream at this day and then not do it. So I did more of that, but we will be on tomorrow because I want to play, and I got a lot of requests to play some Odd Warrior, so I will. And yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this podcast. So keep calm and quest on. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
Take cold comfort in your victory. You win. I can rest now. You win. For now.
Now, your victory proves nothing.
The day is yours.
I choose death.
You have triumphed.
This time. This